Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss the new stories we share. Let's begin. The cold woke me before the crying did. February in Montana doesn't ask permission, it just takes. Takes the warmth from your bones, takes the feeling from your fingers, takes whatever you're foolish enough to leave unprotected. I remember lying there in the dark, my eyes fixed on the ceiling of the bedroom I'd shared with my wife for 12 years. The space beside me was empty, cold sheets where her warmth used to be. Margaret had been gone 3 months by then. Cancer took her fast like it was angry about something, and our daughter, our sweet little Emily Rose, she'd followed her mother into the ground just 6 weeks later. Stillborn. The doctors said these things happen, said it wasn't anyone's fault, said time would heal. They lied. I was 47 years old, and I had nothing left, just 200 acres of frozen earth. A farmhouse that echoed with ghosts and a heart so broken I wasn't sure it still beat some days. That's when I heard it. At first I thought it was a cat. We got strays sometimes, desperate things looking for warmth. I almost rolled over, almost pulled the blankets higher and let the sound fade into the wind. But something stopped me, something in that cry, something human. I sat up slowly, my joints protesting against the cold. The floorboards creaked beneath my bare feet as I crossed to the window. Outside, the world was white and gray and absolutely still. Snow had been falling since sunset, and now it lay thick across the yard, across the barn, across the long dirt road that led to town. The crying came again, closer now, right at my front door. My heart did something strange then. It remembered how to race. I grabbed my robe and moved through the dark house, past the kitchen where Margaret's apron still hung on its hook, past the nursery door I kept closed because I couldn't bear to look inside. The crying grew louder with each step. I reached the front door and hesitated, my hand on the cold brass knob. In all my years on this farm, nobody had ever left anything on my doorstep. Not a package, not a note, nothing. Who would be out here at 3 in the morning? Who would be out in this killing cold? I pulled the door open. The wind hit me first, a slap of frozen air that stole my breath. Then I looked down. A basket, small, woven, covered with a thick wool blanket that was already dusted with snow, and beneath that blanket something was moving, something was crying. My knees nearly buckled right there. I bent down, my hands shaking, and lifted the basket inside. The cold radiated off it like it had been sitting there for hours. I kicked the door shut and carried it to the kitchen, setting it on the table where Margaret and I used to eat our breakfast together. The crying had softened now, weak, getting weaker. I pulled back the blanket, a baby, a tiny, perfect baby with skin so pale it was almost blue, eyes squeezed shut, lips trembling, fingers curled into fists no bigger than walnuts. I don't know why I reached for her. Maybe instinct, maybe desperation, maybe something older than either. But as I lifted her into my arms, something caught my eye. A plastic band wrapped around her wrist. A hospital tag, the tag from St. Francis Memorial, the same hospital where my Emily Rose was born, the same hospital where she died. I brought the tag closer to my face, squinting in the dim kitchen light. The room started spinning. The date on the tag was February 3rd, the same day my daughter was born, the same day she was stillborn. But that wasn't what made my legs give out. That wasn't what sent me crashing to my knees on the cold kitchen floor, clutching this stranger's baby to my chest like she was the only thing keeping me anchored to the earth. It was the identification number. I'd memorized it in those terrible hours at the hospital. Repeated it to myself like a prayer while they took my wife away, while they wrapped my daughter in a blanket she'd never feel. The number on this baby's wrist was exactly 1 digit off from my Emily Rose's. I stayed on that kitchen floor for what felt like hours. The baby pressed against my chest, her cries fading to whimpers, then to silence. For one terrible moment I thought she was gone, that the cold had taken her like it takes everything in Montana. But then I felt it, a flutter, a breath. She was alive, barely. I pulled myself together because I had to, because whatever this was, whatever cosmic mistake or cruel joke had deposited this child on my doorstep. She didn't ask for any of it. She was innocent. She was freezing. She needed help. I carried her to the living room and built a fire in the old stone hearth. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely strike the match. But I got it going, got the flames licking at the dry wood, got the warmth spreading through the room like a living thing. I wrapped her in the quilt Margaret had made during her pregnancy, the one with the yellow ducks and the soft cotton backing, the one that was supposed to be Emily's. As the fire crackled and the baby's color slowly returned, I studied her face. She had dark hair, just wisps of it, and a tiny nose that wrinkled when she breathed. Her eyes were still closed, but her fists had unclenched. Her body was relaxing into the warmth. "Who are you?" I whispered. "Where did you come from?" She didn't answer. Of course she didn't, but I knew one thing for certain. Someone had put her on my porch. Someone had driven through a blizzard, walked up my long driveway, and left a baby in a basket like some kind of biblical story. Why me? The question rattled around my skull as I heated some water on the stove. I didn't have formula, didn't have bottles, didn't have any of the things a baby needed. All that stuff was still in the nursery, still in its packaging, still waiting for a child who never came home. I found a clean cloth and dipped it in warm water, let her suck on it gently. She took to it immediately, her instincts stronger than whatever ordeal she'd survived. "Good girl," I murmured. "That's it. You're safe now." The words felt strange in my mouth. I hadn't spoken gently to anyone in months. Hadn't had reason to. As she settled, I looked at that hospital tag again. Read every piece of information I could decipher. Baby girl, no name listed. Born February 3rd at 2:47 a.m. St. Francis Memorial Hospital. Weight, 6 pounds, 4 ounces. My Emily would have been 6 pounds, 2 ounces. The doctors told me that. Told me she would have been perfect. The similarity made my chest ache in ways I couldn't describe. I reached for the phone on the wall. My hand hovered over the receiver. I should call someone. Sheriff Brennan, the hospital, social services. That's what a rational person would do. But I didn't feel rational. I felt something else entirely. I felt like this baby had been sent to me. Like whatever force controlled the universe had looked down at this broken farmer in this empty house and decided to throw him a lifeline. That's crazy, I told myself. You're going crazy, Daniel. Maybe I was, but I didn't make that call. Instead, I sat in Margaret's rocking chair with the baby in my arms and watched the fire burn down to embers. I listened to her breathe. I felt her tiny heart beating against my chest, and for the first time in 3 months, I didn't want to die. The sun came up around 7, pale and weak through the frost-covered windows. The baby had slept for most of the night, waking only twice for more warm water and gentle rocking. Each time she'd looked at me with those unfocused newborn eyes, and each time I'd felt something crack open inside me. I knew I couldn't keep her. Knew this wasn't real, wasn't permanent, wasn't mine. But I also knew I couldn't let her go. Not yet. Not without answers. I needed to know why someone had left her with me. Needed to know why her tag matched my daughter's so closely. Needed to know if this was coincidence or something darker. The roads would be cleared by noon. I had that long to figure out my next move. I looked down at the sleeping baby in my arms, so small, so fragile, so completely dependent on me to make the right choice. "I hope I don't let you down," I whispered. I seem to do that a lot lately. The knock came at noon, just as I was changing the baby into some of the clothes from the nursery. I froze. The baby in my arms went still too, as if she sensed the tension radiating from my body. Another knock, harder this time. "Daniel," a woman's voice. Familiar. "Daniel, I know you're in there. I saw the smoke from your chimney." I recognized the voice. Sarah Mitchell from the farm down the road. She'd been at Margaret's funeral, brought a casserole I never ate. I looked at the baby, then at the door. I had about 3 seconds to make a decision. "Just a minute," I called out. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, tight, guilty. I carried the baby to the nursery and set her down in the crib that was supposed to be Emily's. She fussed for a moment, then settled into the soft mattress. "Stay quiet," I whispered. "Please." I closed the nursery door and walked to the front of the house. Sarah stood on my porch, bundled in a thick coat and wool hat. Her cheeks were red from the cold, and her eyes held that particular mix of pity and concern that everyone seemed to wear around me these days. "Hey there," she said. "Just wanted to check on you after that storm. Power went out at our place for a few hours. Wanted to make sure you were okay." "I'm fine," I said. The words came out too fast, too defensive. Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly. "You sure? You look a little off, just tired, didn't sleep well." She nodded slowly, but I could tell she didn't believe me. Sarah was sharp, always had been. She'd been a nurse before she married Tom and moved out here to raise cattle. A nurse. The thought hit me like a lightning bolt. "Actually," I said, stepping back from the door, "you want to come in for some coffee?" She looked surprised. In the 3 months since Margaret's death, I'd turned away every visitor, declined every invitation, become the hermit everyone whispered about in town. "Sure," she said cautiously, "that would be nice." I led her to the kitchen, my mind racing. I needed to know about that hospital tag, needed to understand what it meant. And Sarah had worked at St. Francis for 15 years before she retired. As I made coffee, my hands trembling slightly, I tried to figure out how to ask what I needed to ask without revealing what was sleeping in my nursery. Sarah saved me the trouble. "Daniel," she said softly, "I need to tell you something I should have told you months ago, but I didn't know how." I turned to face her. The coffee pot gurgled behind me. "I was there," she continued. "The night your Emily was born, I was working the maternity ward. I felt the floor shift beneath me." "What?" "There was another baby born that night, a few minutes after Emily. The mother was young, 17, came in alone, no family, no support. She named the baby and then she just left, walked right out of the hospital the next morning." My heart was pounding now. "Why are you telling me this?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears because that girl's been causing trouble ever since. "She's on drugs, Daniel, heavy stuff, and last night she showed up at the hospital looking for that baby, demanding to know where they'd placed her." I gripped the counter to steady myself. "Placed her." "The baby was taken by social services, put with a foster family in Helena. But the mother, she was ranting about something, about how she'd made a mistake, about how she needed to get the baby back." Sarah paused, wiping her eyes. She was saying the baby belonged with someone else, someone who'd lost their own child, someone who deserved a second chance. The room was spinning again. "Daniel," Sarah said, "did something happen last night?" I opened my mouth to lie, to deflect, to protect myself and the tiny life in my nursery. But then I heard it. A cry, thin and weak but unmistakable. Sarah's eyes went wide. "Daniel," she whispered. "What is that?" I could have lied, could have said it was the television or a cat or my imagination. But I was so tired of lying, so tired of hiding, so tired of pretending I was okay when I was dying inside. "Come with me," I said. I led her to the nursery and opened the door. Sarah's hands were shaking as she examined the baby. She'd been a nurse for too long to let shock stop her from doing what needed to be done. She checked the baby's vitals, her color, her reflexes. She found the hospital tag and studied it with the same intensity I had. "This is her," Sarah said quietly. "This is the baby from that night, the one born right after your Emily." "How is she here?" I asked. "How did she end up on my porch?" Sarah looked at me and I saw something in her eyes I couldn't quite identify. "Fear, guilt, both. I think I know," she said, "but you're not going to like it." She sat down in the rocking chair, still holding the baby. I leaned against the doorframe, bracing myself for whatever was coming. "The mother's name is Jessica Holloway," Sarah began. "She's from Billings originally. Dropped out of high school, got mixed up with bad people. When she came into the hospital that night, she was alone and terrified. No family, no friends, nothing but a belly full of baby and a head full of demons." I listened in silence. "She asked me about you," Sarah continued. "After Emily. After what happened. She overheard the nurses talking about it, about the stillbirth, about how devastated you and Margaret were. She asked me your name, where you lived. I thought she was just making conversation. I didn't think." She trailed off, tears streaming down her face. I didn't think she'd actually do something like this. The pieces were coming together now, forming a picture I didn't want to see. "She left the baby with me on purpose." I said, "Because of Emily." Sarah nodded. "She must have tracked down the foster family, taken the baby, and brought her here. In her mind, I think she believed she was doing something good. Giving you what she thought you deserved. That's insane. She's sick, Daniel. Mentally, emotionally, she's not well. The drugs, the trauma, whatever happened to her before she got pregnant, it's all twisted up inside her." I looked at the baby in Sarah's arms, so peaceful, so unaware of the chaos surrounding her existence. "What happens now?" I asked. "What do I do?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "The right thing to do is call Sheriff Brennan," she said finally. "Report what happened. Let the authorities sort it out. And the baby, she'll go back to foster care. Eventually, probably, she'll be put up for adoption." I felt something twist in my chest. I'd known this woman for less than 12 hours. She wasn't my daughter. She wasn't Emily. She was a stranger's child, left on my doorstep by a troubled girl who'd made a terrible decision. But when I looked at her, I didn't see a stranger. I saw hope. I saw a second chance. I saw everything I'd lost, wrapped in a blanket my wife had made with her own hands. "There's another option," Sarah said softly. Her voice was barely a whisper now. "What option? You could keep her. Officially, legally. The foster parents, they are overwhelmed, got 3 other kids and not enough resources. If you went through the right channels, showed the courts you could provide a stable home." "Could I interrupted. "Could I really do that?" Sarah looked at me for a long time, looked at the nursery, at the crib, at the changing table still covered in dust. "I think Margaret would want you to try," she said. At the sound of my wife's name, something broke inside me, something that had been locked up tight since the day she died. I started crying, not quiet tears, not dignified grief, ugly, heaving sobs that came from somewhere so deep I'd forgotten it existed. Sarah stood and placed the baby in my arms. She didn't say anything. She just let me hold that tiny life while I fell apart. And in that moment, I made my decision. I'm keeping her, I said through my tears. I don't care what it takes. I'm keeping her. They called it the fastest adoption in Montana history. That wasn't strictly true, of course. Nothing about the process was fast. There were home visits and background checks and court dates and more paperwork than I knew existed. There were moments when I thought I'd lose her, moments when the system seemed designed to crush any hope I had left. But I fought. For the first time since Margaret died, I fought for something. Sarah helped. She testified about my character, about my stability, about the love she'd seen in my eyes when I looked at that baby. Sheriff Brennan helped too, vouching for me as a law-abiding citizen who'd never caused trouble in 30 years of farming. Even Jessica helped in her own way. She wrote a letter to the court from the rehabilitation center where she'd finally agreed to get treatment. She said she'd left the baby with me because she knew I would love her, because she knew I had love to give that needed somewhere to go. She wasn't wrong. On a warm September day, 7 months after that freezing February night, I stood in a courtroom in Helena and watched a judge sign the papers that made me a father. I named her Margaret Rose, Maggie for short. The judge smiled at me from the bench. "Congratulations, Mr. Harlow," she said. "This little girl is lucky to have you." I'm the lucky one, I managed to say, and I meant it. The drive home from Helena took 4 hours, but I didn't mind. Maggie slept most of the way, strapped into the car seat I'd bought 3 months earlier just for this day. Every few minutes, I'd glance in the rearview mirror just to make sure she was still there. Just to make sure this wasn't a dream I'd wake up from. When we pulled up to the farmhouse, Sarah was waiting on the porch with a group of neighbors. They'd strung up a banner that said, "Welcome Home Maggie," in bright pink letters. There was cake and lemonade and more casseroles than I could eat in a year. For the first time since Margaret's funeral, the house was full of laughter. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in the rocking chair with Maggie in my arms. The fire crackled in the hearth. The stars were out, bright and cold, through the window. "I want to tell you about your grandmother," I said softly. "Her name was Margaret, just like you. She had the kindest heart of anyone I ever knew. She would have loved you so much." Maggie looked up at me with those big brown eyes, the same color as rich Montana soil after a spring rain. "And I want to tell you about your sister," I continued. "Emily Rose. She never got to take a breath in this world, but she was loved. She's still loved. She'll always be loved." My voice broke, but I kept going. "You came to me in the coldest, darkest moment of my life. You came when I had nothing left, when I thought I'd never feel anything but pain again. And you taught me something I'd forgotten." I pulled her closer, pressing my lips to her forehead. "You taught me that love doesn't die. It just finds new ways to live." Maggie cooed softly and grabbed my finger with her tiny hand. And in that moment, in that quiet farmhouse in the middle of Montana, surrounded by ghosts and memories and the fading echo of grief, I understood something I'd been too broken to see before. The universe doesn't give us what we deserve. It gives us what we need. And sometimes, when we're at our lowest, when we've lost everything and can't imagine going on, it sends us a miracle wrapped in a frozen blanket on the coldest night of the year. I don't know why I was chosen. Don't know why Jessica picked my door out of all the doors in the world. Don't know what cosmic accident or divine intervention led to that moment. But I do know this. That freezing baby saved my life, and I will spend every day of mine making sure she knows how loved she is, how wanted, how absolutely, completely, impossibly mine. Maggie closed her eyes, her breathing slowing into the rhythm of sleep. I rocked her gently, watching the fire burn, watching the stars wheel overhead, watching this new life unfold in ways I never could have imagined. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt something I thought I'd never feel again. I felt at peace. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe and visit the channel for more real-life stories just like this one.